In recent weeks, complaints have emerged from some businesses across the country who are unable to find workers to fill certain open positions. According to Washington Post economics reporter Jeff Stein, the director of the White House National Economic Council has, quote, highlighted the matter as a potential area for concern in internal conversations with the president's economic team, while Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has, quote, cautioned privately against overreacting to anecdotes of worker shortages.
So joining us now to discuss, friend of the show, Jeff Stein himself. Jeff, break down this report for us a little bit about how people in the White House are thinking, and also just react. We just got some breaking numbers in terms of jobless claims and more. What is the state of the economy, and how does this all fit together?
So right now, the White House is just being absolutely bombarded by complaints from leading businesses, trucking, the lumber industry, the hospitality industry, restaurant industry. Big business groups are coming to the White House and saying, hey, we're having problems finding workers. This is, I think, as the story reflects, something the White House is worried about and worried will slow down the recovery if businesses can't hire enough people to get back, to meet the demand that's loosening through the American economy right now. But there's really, at least so far, no macro data to support these anecdotes. And normally, if we really were seeing tight labor markets, to the extent that would maybe require a policy response, you would see very fast wage growth at the bottom of the income distribution. And maybe that will materialize in the next set of data we get, but that has not occurred in the data, and we don't have proof of that. So Treasury Secretary Yellen and others are saying, look, this recovery is picking up steam. That's really exciting and really good, but we need to not take our foot off the gas too soon, not try to respond to these businesses too quickly, and do something that could stall the recovery in a dangerous way. The report you just mentioned, good signs in some regards, but still, 18 million Americans on unemployment, 8 million or so jobs in the hole from before the pandemic. We still have many, many months to go before we're even back to pre-pandemic levels. So still a lot of heartbreak out there.
Well, and isn't the way this works that if you can't get workers at a certain wage, then you lift the wage, and then you're more likely to have a better chance of getting workers? I mean, over so many years, I think we've been so used to wages being stuck at a certain level that the idea that they should move upward at all is sort of like anathema to business.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that there are no small businesses that are genuinely struggling to find workers at the rate that they can afford with what's happening. And the unemployment benefits were a decision made, in response to the public health crisis. But for some people, it's more lucrative to stay home than their prior jobs, which were often not good or fulfilling in many ways. I would also just say, for the businesses that are making these complaints, there's a really strong element of crying wolf. We had businesses complaining as early as 2013, 2014 about labor shortages, and the economy and the labor market continued to expand dramatically through 2019. So we had 6-7 years after those complaints started to emerge in which the number of workers coming off the sidelines continued to increase. So to say, already that we're seeing labor shortages is like a lot of the policymakers, a lot of the reporters are sort of like, you guys say this every time it looks like there will be wages at the bottom of the income distribution. Should we be maybe a little skeptical of your complaints this time?
Mm-hmm. And, interestingly, Jeff, I've been hearing a lot of deficit and inflation talk out of the White House. What is going on exactly? Secretary Janet Yellen apparently voicing at least some private concern. White House now talking about inflation, which I told you're not allowed to do under the Trump era. What's happening?
It's pretty funny, I think. They're really caught in this super awkward position where they feel the need to both say, we're watching it and we're concerned about it, but also that it's not a problem at all. And it spills out in weird ways where Treasury Secretary Yellen earlier this week was trying to sort of say, if inflation is a problem, we will be able to get it under control. But those remarks sort of suggested that policymakers in the White House are genuinely concerned about it, which they also say they are. So it's kind of a mess. I mean, I was talking to a senior Democrat the other day who was trying to persuade me that, we were going to write in the story that they're nervous about this and that they're, a little on edge. And he called me, he was like, we're not on edge at all. And it's like, you sound a little on edge. So it's an interesting position they're in because the White House wants to demonstrate that they're taking these things seriously, that they're listening to the concerns of businesses, and that they're listening to concerns about inflation. But they also are in a position where they did this $1.9 trillion stimulus, rejecting the idea that this would have inflationary impacts. When Larry Summers was running around saying, "You guys are being completely irresponsible. You don't understand." They went out and they rejected that. So now they have to stay to the line that that's not going to happen. But they also need to show that they're sort of being adults about tracking the numbers seriously. And there are real the macro inflation numbers, the core CPI that includes energy and food, sort of the most important measures, that has been in check for now. It's really not growing out of control, but for sure in some sectors we're seeing weird price spikes. The lumber numbers, I'm sure you guys have seen the Joe Weisenthal tweets that are really fun about this, but
yes,
that's pretty, that puts a real crimp in housing demands and housing starts, and there's economic potential that's being wasted as supply chains struggle to meet the demand that was pushed through the stimulus. So we'll see if those sector-specific inflationary spikes materialize in a more macro way in the next couple months.
Jeff, the last thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is a federal judge struck down the eviction moratorium just yesterday. That was set to come to an end June 30th. There's some other reporting out there that the rent relief that has been passed, their states and localities are having big trouble trying to get that into the hands of tenants and landlords. What do you think the risk is? Do we have any sense of how many people are behind on their rent and what the risk there is in terms of people losing their housing?
I don't want to, I'm pretty sure the latest number I saw was in the tens of millions of people who are behind on rent and potentially at risk of eviction. There was an interesting study that came out recently that said that because of the eviction moratorium, we actually had fewer evictions over the last year than we would in a normal year, despite everything that's happening with the pandemic. So that's a good thing, but maybe, given the economic shocks people are going through and the inability to get that housing assistance out, that is really incredible. It's my understanding that basically none of that money approved, not in March, but in December, so months and months ago, none of that money is getting out. And there's going to be a lot of questions, especially if the moratorium expires and people start getting evicted. What is the holdup? Why is Treasury taking so long to get this out? And what consequences is that going to have for millions of people across the country?
Yeah, one to keep an eye on. Jeff, thank you so much. We always appreciate having you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys, so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Coming up, former congressional candidate Gary Chambers. He's going to talk about his new organizing an initiative in the Deep South when Rising returns.